My name is Robin Stitt. As ministers, you've probably already experienced some level of anxiety in ministry. But did you know that research indicates many ministers suffer from symptoms of burnout that affect ministry? I help ministers identify those signs and symptoms of clergy burnout and deliver amazing presentations. Today, I'm going to show you how to identify signs and symptoms of clergy burnout and how to avoid it. We'll discuss burnout and its impact, explore self-reflecting in areas of your personal ministry, and then we're going to create an action plan. These are the learning outcomes. I won't read them, but I will allow you a moment to look at it. So before we get started, I have a little demonstration for you that hopefully will help you to understand the impact of clergy burnout. Here is an egg. It's not cracked, looks very nice, ready to be cooked and ate. If I take this knife and crack it, you see the hole. If I hit it again, stuff runs out. This is what clergy burnout looks like. It starts with a crack, then it gets bigger, then the next thing you know, the entire egg is crushed. I want you to think for a moment what you gathered from what I just told you about the egg, where it's whole, so that means that the pastor is healthy and good. Then we crack it, and that means that there's some signs and symptoms of burnout that are visible and noticeable until it ends up like this, cracked. So tell me what you're thinking about that for a moment.
I'm thinking as the pastor has to deal with my problems, your problems, your problems, your problems, everybody's problems, he's getting a crack. And pretty soon, with his having to deal with all of that, plus his own, that crack is gonna break like you.
Exactly. So, we want to define clergy burnout. So I'm going to give you a piece of paper and a pen. You can just take one and pass it along. And what I want you to do for the next minute or two is to write down your own definition of what you think clergy burnout is. And we'll discuss later some of those definitions. It can be words, or it can be a phrase or an entire sentence that describes what you believe clergy burnout is. So now we're going to take like the next 2 minutes or so to discuss your words or your phrases. What did you come up with? Just anybody who wants to volunteer.
I said, when the pastor's spirits gets foggy and cannot see their way clearly.
When their spirit gets foggy and they can't see their way clearly. Very good. Anyone else?
I say clergy burnout is being under a lot of stress, tired, feel defeated.
Tired and feeling defeated. Very good.
And I said inability to deal constructively with day-to-day problems.
Inability to deal constructively with day-to-day problems. Okay? And you?
I wrote clergy burnout is when a pastor or minister or any other member of the clergy gets tired, overwhelmed, and exhausted doing the work of the ministry. It's when they no longer have the passion or desire to perform the tasks or assignments at hand.
So I heard a couple of key words. You talked about exhaustion. You talked about having a loss of passion. They don't have that passion anymore. So all of those things are correct and they sound very good. They're very good definitions. Now that we understand the different perspectives that we have about clergy burnout, I want to start a short video and I want you to watch it.
With a lot of people. And I think at its heart, it has two aspects. There can be a physical element. You know, when Elijah ran from Jezebel, he was tired. The very first thing God did was he gave him rest and he gave him food. And there are times that men in the ministry just need to rest and get away. My dad used to say, come apart and rest or you just come apart. I've never forgotten that. And you know, the whole Sabbath rhythm that God gave us in creation is important. The problem with preachers is that they're typically working on Sundays, the day that most other people take as something of a day of rest and relaxation. A lot of times it's the busiest day of the week, the most stressful day of the week for a preacher. So it's important that a man makes certain that he is getting a Sabbath rest. It's part of the rhythm of creation. We're not talking about a legalistic observance. We're talking about God's gift to humanity that we should receive. It's just part of wisdom and ministry. I believe part of that is taking vacations. It doesn't have to be someplace expensive. You can just but go somewhere, get away when you can do that, so that you have a time to grow again, renew yourself. I think that's very, very important. But another cause of burnout is spiritual. And that comes because we lose sight of the purpose. We can get our self-worth from whether or not our church is growing, whether or not we're seeing people come to faith in Christ and be baptized. And those periods of harvest are indeed wonderful. But the older I've gotten, the more I've learned, just be faithful. There have been times of decline, and I've seen church attendance go down, and I realized that I just needed to continue to be faithful. Yeah, there are some things I need to do better. There is no cure quite like just going out and sharing the gospel with people and winning folks to Christ. That seems to cure a lot of burnout. But I also find a great joy and a great strength in making my marriage something of a battery charge itself. I can take anything out there in the world. If I can come home to a wife who gets it, who gets me, who is a partner in ministry, who encourages me, sometimes challenges and rebukes me with the word. And through the years, I've just learned that really is so important. Because if things are good at home, you can take it when you go out there and it's not. But man, no matter how good things are out there, if you're coming home to an empty marriage that's not fulfilling, it can be bad. So I tell young pastors to make sure that you tend to matters at home, that you love your wife as Christ loved the church, that you disciple her, that you shepherd her heart. Don't neglect her and your children for the sake of your church. God's called you primarily in their lives. I love my church, but the reality is I can build another church. I can't replace my wife. She is God's gift to me in a special way. And I've learned that when our relationship is vibrant and exciting, when we delight one another's company, hey, I don't get burned out there as much either. You know, God gave us a partner in ministry for a reason. I think we need to be renewed in that, and it helps us be renewed in the Word.
So as we view this video, we see that there's a lot of things that people can do to avoid, or preachers can do to avoid burnout. So now I'm going to share with you just a little bit in the lecture part and share some information with you. So, over the past 3 decades, there's been a lot of attention to the professional and clergy burnout and work-related psychological health among clergy is increasing. Burnout, depression, and loneliness affects veteran as well as new clergy in every religious movement. So there's not any place or any church that you could go to where burnout is not going to affect clergy somewhere. Burnout is generally understood to be an emotional collapse or a breakdown that sometimes comes as a result of chronic stress in the context of one's job-related roles and responsibilities. So preachers have, or pastors have, many roles, and so that stress comes from, or the emotional collapse comes from that part of the ministry. Clergy play a major role in addressing the needs of the congregant's physical, emotional, and spiritual needs. So we talked about that earlier, and we heard it in some of your definitions where you talked about their incapacity to be able to have that passion and concern for people because they're hearing all of these different things from people, from the congregation. So, you know, the more that the pastor hears, the more you may be putting stress on them. And sometimes we just have to realize that everything doesn't have to be discussed. That's why we have prayer, that's why we do other things, right? So, they play a major role in taking care of our physical needs because they're there to make sure they go visit when we're sick. They're taking care of our emotional needs. And of course, when we come to worship, they're taking care of our spiritual needs. Clergy are also involved in our major life changes, like when we lose jobs or we lose loved ones or we get a divorce. The clergy is usually the one who is there to assist us, like with marriage and death and things of that nature, serious illness. They're always there. Clergy should recognize, and this is on the part of the pastor, that congregants often view the pastor as godlike or a parental figure. They look at them and they want the pastor to be able to answer questions and give them information or advice that's going to be pertinent to their life. So a pastor is always on call 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We never get a break. Research provides some interesting statistics about the impact of clergy burnout. So I'm going to give you some statistics. They found that 13% of clergy in a study reported themselves as burnout, 13%. 23% reported themselves as depressed. This study also was using 6,900 congregations across the world. There was no change in the statistics at the end of the 6 months, so the 23 and the 13% that said that they were burnout or that they were depressed, it didn't change over a 6-month period once the study had stopped. So what they were dealing with at this end of the spectrum, they were still dealing with it at the end of the study, even after it was over. In the Protestant church, there was a study done where 19% of the clergy were at a severe range of burnout, 56% at a borderline range, and 50% dropped out of ministry within the first 5 years of being in ministry. And 85% of the seminary students left ministry within the first 5 years of completing their training. So this is a real problem. It's a real problem, and we've got to do something about that. Maslick in the 70s noted there was a constellation of symptoms associated with burnout. There's a low sense of accomplishment, like the pastor may feel like he's not able to move the people or excite the people or, get them to do what needs to be done. There's high emotional exhaustion, and there's a high degree of depression.